Michael Ealy, talk to me a little bit about why you feel like it was important for you to be here today and a part of this summit when we're talking about black men voting.
I believe that we have to change the narrative. You know, the narrative that we don't show up for our communities, we don't show up to vote, I think it needs to be debunked, if you will. I mean, the data says that's not true. And I think the energy that you felt in that room tonight kind of conveyed the exact same thing. When we show up strong.
I'm here today because a real issue is on the ballot, and that's the issue of gun violence. It's the #1 cause of death for black men and for black youth. And I'm a survivor of gun violence. I was shot in April of 2013, and the bullet nearly cost me my life. And there's a real contrast this election. You know, we have a choice in Donald Trump, someone who says this is an issue that we should get over and that brags about taking no action. Or we can vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, who oversaw the first bill passed in 30 years, who spent almost her entire career working on this issue. Her first term as district attorney, she was removing illegal guns from our communities and supporting mothers that lost their loved ones. And she's also overseeing the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. And so there's a very clear contrast in a president who really cares about saving our lives and seeing us as people first and not just a suspect, or voted for someone who has a long history and clearly looking at us as criminals first and pushing really a tough on crime strategy and not a smart on crime one.
D.L. Hughley, we're here at the BET Black Men Summit, and we're talking about black men voting.
Sure.
Big conversation in today's world. Why do you think right now it's such a critical point for black men to actually get out and vote?
Well, I think that we have that definitely everybody sees our import, and it's important that we take advantage of that. Power concedes nothing without a demand. They just don't need to know that we can vote. We need to do. I think what they're doing is right. We are doing is right. Is leveraging our vote for a transactional. We'll give you this, you give us that. That's what politics is all about. It's not a beauty contest. And I think that ultimately, it's the first time I've ever seen America ask a black man what they wanted. Well, it's the first time I've seen anybody ask a black man what he wanted. So it's an interesting dichotomy we find ourselves in, and I hope that we do everything we can to not squander this moment.
Yeah. And, you know, you even talked about your own personal trials with going and following some misinformation you might have seen online or being susceptible to that.
Right.
How do you think we can get people from believing the clickbaity type stuff to actually researching the data?
Well, I think that I'm probably a poor person. I didn't research until, so it's really hard for me to come down on somebody. But I will say this, that the very same question that the vice president asked me to take a look at her record, I could have done myself. I can't, and I say this all the time, I can't explain what made me want to believe the things I believe, but I did, obviously. And I think that's to my great lament, but I think that somebody else who is in that position now would say that you owe it to yourself to know what's going on. You owe it to yourself. Listen, the fact that I would down or kind of accuse a black woman of something and believe it so easily and so readily and to co-opt society's narrative makes me feel bad, and I don't want anybody else to feel like this and put themselves in this position, because it's an untenable position to be in.
Yeah, but I mean, as you said, that so much misinformation is pushed in front of your face so much of the time.
You can learn the words to a song. You can learn the words to the truth. You can learn the words to a recipe. If you can watch TikTok videos and learn how to do it. I mean, so I think you have to want to know. And oftentimes you don't know because you don't want to.
The black male vote is so important. It's a popular topic. We hear a lot of the reasons why a lot of black men aren't voting for Kamala. What are some of the things you might have heard, some of the misconceptions that might be out there?
Well, I think the black man's vote has always mattered, right? Because we are the second largest voting bloc in the behind black women. So in a lot of ways, I don't, there's a lot of misinformation out there. I genuinely don't want to continue to spread it.
I love that answer, actually.
I feel like it's out there, and a lot of it has been debunked. What I find fascinating is that some people can look at their feed and get all the misinformation, but for whatever reason, the algorithm doesn't send them the correct information. And so it's on us to check each other. I think it's on us to kind of check in with each other and make sure that people aren't running with all the wrong information and making the wrong decisions and spreading that. So I think we got to look out for each other a little bit more.
Like a lot of the rhetoric in what I call the algorithm of social media, it's disinformation. 80% of black men show up to vote, and we're second to black women. So we always show up when we're needed. And I think that a lot of that is Russian bots coupled with, these companies. They actually have companies that they hire to leave comments and do all the things. I did a simple post after the DNC saying what these beautiful young ladies said about how to say their auntie's name. And I was like, Kamala. And I probably had 20-something thousand comments, and maybe 18,000 were negative. So you can't really depend on the algorithm. I think you need to really tap into the portion of, since the 2020 election, we have 8 million new 18-year-olds, right, that are legal to vote. So I think the confusion is with them. They're not certain, they're unsure, they don't feel like they're being talked to. But that's a pure myth that grown black men aren't voting or not supporting Kamala Harris.
I feel like the topic comes up a lot, of course, about all the information you're seeing online and stuff like that. What do you think we can do better to kind of shift through all the clickbaity type stuff and actually get people to start looking at the facts?
That's a tough one because I think it's going to require a massive culture shift. The culture right now is stuck on sound bites. The culture right now is stuck on quick microwave type fixes, right? Historically, it took us a long time to get voting rights. It took us a long time to get civil rights. It took the LGBTQ community a long time to get the right to marry. Like, it quite frankly took the Republicans over 50 years to overturn Roe v. Wade. So change takes time, and I think in a lot of ways this the younger generation isn't quite aware. I think they have the expectation that things can change as fast as technology produces it. And that's just not the case, especially when it comes to legislation.
You can tap in first and foremost to issues that matter most to you. The second thing you could do is Google. It's free. You can hear some, disinformation or something you're not sure about. You can fact check it. That you can actually type in what you heard. Is Kamala Harris's daddy black? And it's a black man gonna pop up like poof, and whoop, there it is.
What do you say to the people who say it's just one vote, my vote doesn't matter, it won't make a difference?
There are elections that are won by 7 votes. The last presidential election in 2020, Joe Biden won by 11,742 votes. Every single vote matters. Every vote counted so much that Trump illegally called up the head of Georgia elections and tried to ask for that many votes. Like, everybody's vote matters. And even though it doesn't always feel like it matters if you're not in a swing state, it does matter. It really does matter, because ultimately it's not just one vote. People got to remember that. You're voting for your local offices as well, because those are the ones that are going to affect your daily lives. So it's important that you vote up and down the ballot. And the more power that you can give to the top of the ticket, the more likely that legislation that you want will come through.
Honestly, our lives depend on it. And it's not just about politics. It's not about talking points. I mean, this is literally the issue that is costing us our lives. I mean, during the event, we literally asked folks in the room to raise their hand if they know someone who had been shot or killed, and every single person in the room raised their hand. Gun violence is literally one step away from all of us, if not already on our front porch. But that doesn't mean that we have to accept it, and it doesn't mean that we can't change things. And we've seen the last few years that when you do invest in resources in communities, when you do pass laws and policies, you can reduce violence. I mean, places like Boston only have 16 homicides. Newark, New Jersey, 27. Detroit, the lowest murder rate since 1960s. Miami since the 1950s. Newport News is down 61%. Philadelphia is down 43%. I mean, across the country, we're seeing steep reductions in violence, and specifically gun violence. And the biggest reductions are in our cities where our communities are. And so when we think about voting, it's not about a political process. It's literally about deciding who you want to be looking after your family, your neighbors, your cousins, and your future youth.
For the people who say it's just one vote, it's just my one vote, it won't really matter, it won't make a difference, what advice can you give to them?
Well, ask all the women in this country who just lost autonomy of their body. Ask all the environmental rollbacks that happened. Ask all the listen. No matter what you think of what happened now, COVID was obviously not the administration's fault, but it was a test of leadership, and every administration will be tested from a leadership perspective. He failed that test, and that's why he was fired. And a lot of people died, not as a result of what would have happened anyway, but his feckless leadership. The fact that we were so disjointed, that there was no nucleus, there was no hub, there was nobody telling everyone what to do. We were literally all on our own. And for people to go, well, I got a STEMI check, that's insane to me. And if you got a STEMI check, like literally, you got $1,200, so that makes you want to get rid of the Department of Education. You got $1,200, so that makes you let me see the government to be in control of a woman's right. Eggs are high, and you're gonna let the government control her eggs. I just don't understand people's logic.
Like my brother Michael Ealy said on stage tonight, you have an option to keep democracy in place, or you can be ruled by a dictator. And if you like what's going down in Russia, if you like what's going down in China, I suggest you sit your lazy ass home. If not, I need to get your inspired ass up now after seeing this clip and go vote.